We do want to turn now our attention to a story that is quickly gaining international attention. And taking a look here at some footage, Mexican drug kingpin Ismael Zambada Garcia, also known as El Mayo, who co-founded the notorious Sinaloa drug cartel, was captured in El Paso, Texas last night. Also taken into custody was Joaquin Guzman Lopez, the son of El Chapo. For more on this story, I'd like to get to a report from Fox News correspondent Madeline Rivera.
Fentanyl is the deadliest drug threat our country has ever faced.
Attorney General Merrick Garland underscoring the seriousness of the drug epidemic sweeping across the United States as he announces the arrest of two key leaders of the notorious Sinaloa drug cartel, Ismael Zambada Garcia, known as El Mayo, and Joaquin Guzman Lopez.
Both men are facing multiple charges in the United States for leading the cartel's criminal operations.
El Mayo, one of the cartel's alleged co-founders and long sought after by U.S. law enforcement, was unknowingly lured to the U.S. on a private plane Thursday under false pretenses by Guzman Lopez, the son of the cartel's other co-founder, El Chapo. The Sinaloa cartel is one of the most powerful and violent drug trafficking organizations in Mexico, responsible for distributing fentanyl, cocaine, and other drugs throughout the United States and Europe.
This capture is huge. It's still early to see what the impact will be in Mexico, but it's certainly going to change, no question about it.
In a statement, President Biden commended law enforcement for arresting the two men and for continuing to bring Sinaloa cartel leaders to justice. El Mayo and Guzman Lopez joined other top Sinaloa leaders in U.S. custody, including El Chapo, who was sentenced to life in prison on drug conspiracy charges in 2019.
The Justice Department will not rest until every single cartel leader, member, and associate responsible for poisoning our communities is held accountable.
The Justice Department says both men will make their initial appearances in federal court the coming days. In Washington, Madeline Rivera, Fox News.
Thank you, Madeline, for that report. But I'd like to continue on this conversation and bring onto the program next Mary Beth Sheridan. She is with the Washington Post and actually the bureau chief, over there in Mexico City. Mary Beth, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us here. We got a little bit of a snippet in that reporter package that we heard from Madeline, but this is a big deal. What just happened last night, the capturing of these two highly coveted and profiled individuals. So tell us exactly, how were they able to be captured in Texas?
Oh, it's really a strange story. We've heard a couple versions. One is that they gave themselves in, but the other version that we're hearing from several officials is that actually El Mayo Zambada, the elderly historic drug dealer who was so important in the Sinaloa cartel, was tricked into getting on a plane thinking he was going to look at some real estate investments, but in fact the plane was headed to the U.S. So he was actually, according to several officials, was tricked and suddenly found himself landing just outside El Paso.
Tell us more about El Mayo, his profile, if you will, his background. Why is he sought after, and he has been sought after so many years by authorities here in the U.S.?
That's right. You know, he was partners with El Chapo Guzman in really creating the Sinaloa cartel, which is just this massive global organization that's moved tons of drugs and obviously is seen as one of the pioneers in really flooding the U.S. with fentanyl. But whereas Chapo was this very kind of showy guy with lots of girlfriends and tunneling out of prisons and so on, El Mayo was very low-key, believed to live in like a rural part of Mexico, never in the press, and was thought to be this kind of savvy operator who was as important as El Chapo, maybe more so, even though he was not as well known to the public.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, and I think it could segue us to the next point of this other question that I want to ask. For our viewers who aren't so familiar with the drug trade and cartels down there in Mexico, tell us about how powerful the Sinaloa cartel is.
No, for a long time, it was seen as the most powerful cartel. Now there's a rival, the Jalisco cartel, also really important and with a lot of control. But I think the Sinaloa cartel was noteworthy because partly it had pretty vast international operations, of course, very active in the United States and distributing fentanyl, but also cocaine, heroin, and so on. It also is believed to have a lot of ties to politicians, which apparently gave it some of its impunity for a long time. So now there's a lot of questions about whether, with these arrests, these suspects might actually turn over the names of people in the political and security world who provided them with protection.
Here we're just showcasing some B-roll and footage that we've gotten. You can just see the mounds of drugs that have been confiscated and have all been attributed to these certain cartels that are there in Mexico. Mary Beth, what happens next within the power dynamic with the cartels now? Does someone else take over? Is that person already well known? What comes next after this capture? Surely these operations don't just stop.
Right about that. So first of all, fentanyl is a drug that's relatively easy to make, and the thought is that there's actually lots and lots of small producers of fentanyl who would sell their product, so to speak, to the Sinaloa cartel. So they're still out there. There's a lot of thought that the other major cartel in Mexico, the Jalisco cartel, will now try to move and fill that void. There's actually a lot of concern that there could be a spike in violence in Mexico as Jalisco tries to move in and establish itself in some of the territories that Sinaloa previously controlled. A lot of the experts tell us that they do think the fentanyl flow will continue. This is clearly a signal being sent to traffickers that there may not be impunity, but there is a demand on the part of addicts for this drug. And so the thought is that we may see a kind of reshuffling or different configuration, but it's unlikely to dry up the supply of fentanyl.
And I think that points to the bigger issue here. Of course, we have these two well-known and wanted leaders from the Sinaloa cartel. But when we talk about this driving force of fentanyl coming into the U.S., it's not as easy to just stop that flow because you've arrested a few people. There's clearly a bigger underlying issue.
That's correct. And in fact, one of the experts we spoke to said to us that the real sort of prize, so to speak, for the U.S. government in these arrests could actually be that they learn the names of Mexican officials who have provided impunity and a degree of security to these drug traffickers, because that is what allows them to produce their product and to move it through Mexico without big problems.
And Mary Beth, I do understand that you are the Mexico City Bureau Chief. So what kind of reaction have you heard more locally down there in Mexico City after this news broke?
Oh, it's been very curious because the Mexican government said that they knew nothing about this operation, and they only found out about it yesterday, they said, when the U.S. Embassy called them several hours after these two alleged traffickers had arrived in the U.S. and been taken into custody. Only then did the Mexican officials learn about it, according to the information they've made public today. So the president and his security minister have been very sort of tranquil about it, saying, well, we always cooperate with the U.S. and we're happy to, but this was not something we had anything to do with. There are some officials who seem annoyed that the U.S. did not bring Mexico in on the information. I think that there always is worry in the U.S. government that if too many people find out about their operations against drug trafficking leaders, that word gets leaked and the operation gets foiled. So this may be one of those cases where the information was very closely held. But the reaction is not quite as strong as I probably would have anticipated. Part of that also could be that we were told by one official that a certain amount of the arrangements for this whole thing were made really in the United States, working through Ovidio Guzman, who is the brother of Joaquin, one of the men arrested yesterday. They're both the sons of El Chapo Guzman. So some officials have said that, in fact, Joaquin was cooperating. Now, his lawyer has basically denied that and said he was taken to the U.S. against his will. But there are several U.S. officials pointing to Joaquin, saying that he was part of this deal in an effort to try to get reduced sentences for his brother, who's in jail in the U.S., and get more leniency for himself.
I do have a follow-up question to that answer that you just gave us, Mary Beth, if I may. Within the reporting that you've done with these certain types of issues, have you witnessed a disconnect between American law enforcement and Mexican law enforcement? I mean, they're both trying to get to the same goal, no?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think it would be fair to say that yes, in Mexico, there's been a lot of friction, particularly between the DEA and the Mexican government. I think the Mexican government views the DEA as being sort of a political instrument because DEA officials have been quite aggressive in going after Mexican government officials, and they've been fairly open in talking about Mexican government corruption. So that tension is there. I think it's fair to say that for many years, at least a part of the Mexican security apparatus really provided security for drug traffickers. So while there are certainly officials who've given their lives and worked hard to go after these groups, there is also a part of the state that has protected them, in exchange for bribes. So there's often some tension between the two sides because U.S. officials sometimes worry about who is corrupt and who isn't. Who can they trust?
And then, Mary Beth, just finally, we were digging into some background, of course, when it comes to the two the two men who were captured just last night. I did have a question. Why is he called El Mayo? Is there a reason for that name?
Right. Well, it's not as colorful as El Chapo. El Chapo means shorty, and he's fairly short. El Mayo is related to his middle name, we understand, which is Mario. So instead of El Mario, El Mayo, it sort of apparently came to be through just a sort of version of his middle name.
All right. Well, we do appreciate that context. Like I said, we were kind of scouring the internet to try to get the most background that we could on these two individuals. Mary Beth Sheridan, the Washington Post Mexico City Bureau Chief. We appreciate your time, and we hope to follow up with you soon as we continue to track these developments.
And nice to be with you. Thank you.
Of course. You take care. Have a good rest of your day. I do want to continue on with this topic, though. We did hear from the Attorney General, Merrick Garland. He did speak on these arrests. We do have kind of a short soundbite where he encompasses what went into this operation and the goal that was reached. Let's watch.
Last year, I said that the Justice Department would never stop working to hold accountable those who are responsible for the fentanyl epidemic. On Thursday, the Justice Department took into custody in El Paso 2 more alleged leaders of the Sinaloa Cartel, one of the most violent and powerful drug trafficking organizations in the world. Both men are facing multiple charges in the United States for leading the cartel's criminal operations, including its deadly drug manufacturing and trafficking networks. The first is Ismael Zambada Garcia, or El Mayo, a co-founder of the cartel. He is facing charges for fentanyl trafficking, money laundering, firearms offenses, kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit murder. The second, Juaquin Guzman Lopez, is a son of its other co-founder, known as El Chapo, and is facing charges for trafficking in large quantities of cocaine, heroin, and meth, among other drugs. Both defendants will have their initial appearances in federal court in the coming days. El Mayo and Guzman Lopez join a growing list of Sinaloa cartel leaders and associates who the Justice Department is holding accountable in the United States. This includes the cartel's other co-founder, El Chapo, another of El Chapo's sons and an alleged cartel leader, Ovidio Guzman Lopez, and the cartel's alleged lead sicario, or assassin, known as El Nini. Fentanyl is the deadliest drug threat our country has ever faced. The Justice Department will not rest until every single cartel leader, member, and associate responsible for poisoning our communities is held accountable.
All right, listening there to the short remarks from Attorney General Merrick Garland, I do want to bring up a tweet here on your screen from the U.S. Department of Justice with a photo of Garland, and it says this: the Justice Department will not rest until every single cartel leader, member, and associate responsible for poisoning our communities is held accountable.